In today's video, we explore the truths about the Titanic, some of which you may already know, but I believe there will be surprises for you. The Titanic was a luxurious steamship, despite claims that it was unsinkable. The reality is that it rests permanently at the bottom of the ocean after striking an iceberg on April 15, 1912. Over 1,500 passengers and crew perished in that tragic sinking. It has inspired numerous books and films, notably the 1997 movie Titanic starring Kate Winslet and Leonardo DiCaprio. Now let's delve into some potentially frightening facts about the Titanic. The first fact is that during its construction, 8 people lost their lives in an incident. While some considered it an ominous sign, only 5 of the deceased were publicly identified: Samuel Scott, John Kelly, William Clark, James Dobbin, and Robert Murphy. Secondly, an American novelist accurately predicted the Titanic disaster in 1898, 14 years before it happened. Morgan Robertson authored a book titled The Wreck of the Titan, featuring a giant ship named Titan colliding with an iceberg in the North Atlantic and sinking. There are striking similarities between the book and the Titanic, including the names Titan and Titanic, similar sizes, iceberg collisions, and sinking in April. Morgan's detailed prediction left people astonished, though he denied any psychic abilities, attributing it to coincidence. The third truth, immediately after the ship sank, was a serious misinformation spread by several newspapers, announcing that there were no casualties after the Titanic's sinking. Personally, I find this quite horrifying because it seems like they provided the families of the victims with false hope and then extinguished it. The fourth detail has been adapted by the author James Cameron into the 1997 movie Titanic. Involves the ship's band during its sinking. Wallace Hartley encouraged the remaining 8 band members to play music to keep all passengers calm. Naturally, after that, Wallace, along with the sinking ship, descended deep into the ocean. 2 weeks later, his body was found along with his cherished violin. The instrument was an engagement gift for his unmarried fiancée, Maria. Later, it was returned to Maria as a keepsake. Maria, who never married, lived with the memories of her deceased fiancé for the rest of her life. Did you know that the wealthiest person in the world at that time also perished on the Titanic? John Jacob Astor IV was not only the richest passenger on the ship, but rumors circulated that he was the wealthiest person globally at that time. John's estimated wealth at the time of his death was around $150 million, equivalent to approximately $3.5 billion today. At the age of 46, John was returning from a month-long honeymoon with his 18-year-old wife. His body was one of the few victims found at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean after the ship sank. $3,000 in cash was still in John's pocket at the time of the discovery, equivalent to $60,000 today. The next peculiar fact involves a female passenger named Violet Jessup, who was a nurse and is considered extremely fortunate for surviving 2 shipwrecks. In the Titanic sinking of 1912, the then 25-year-old Violet was lucky to be lowered onto a lifeboat and survived. Subsequently, she continued working on the Britannic in 1916, 4 years later, but it also sank, this time due to a German mine. Violet survived once again, but she suffered severe brain damage from a serious head injury. The seventh truth revolves around the orphaned children of the Titanic, the Navratil brothers, considered the only surviving orphans on the Titanic. Their names were Edmund and Michelle, aged only 2 and 4 when the ship sank. It appears that they were kidnapped by their own father and taken aboard the ship. This man wanted to raise the children after a divorce, but the court did not permit it. Therefore, he used every means to bring the children to the United States with him. When the incident occurred, the father tried to place his 2 children on a lifeboat, and his body was never found. Upon returning to the mainland, the 2 children were reunited with their mother after a month, through advertisements in newspapers published throughout England. In a touching story, Anne Elizabeth Isham refused a lifeboat rescue because her dog wasn't allowed on board. She jumped off the lifeboat and her body, still holding her dog, was later found at the ocean floor. 5 days after the Titanic permanently sank into the depths, the body of a child was found. The child was buried in the Nova Scotia Cemetery, commemorating approximately 1,000 unidentified children who perished in that horrific shipwreck. Subsequently, the child's shoes were donated to a museum, subjected to DNA testing, and the family was identified. Despite confirming the identity, the family wished for the child to remain buried there with a gravestone inscribed, "Unknown Child." They expressed the desire for the memorial to be preserved as a tribute to all the nameless children who lost their lives in the Titanic disaster. Next we have a shoe graveyard. In 2004 this photo was shared on social media, taken beneath the ocean where the Titanic sank. Surely these are the shoes of one of the unfortunate victims. At this depth, human remains tend to decompose rapidly, and all that remains are a few items of clothing and, in this case, a pair of shoes. In the final segment of today's video it's mentioned that there were at least 13 couples on their honeymoon aboard the Titanic, and one of them was Mr. John H. Chapman, age 37, accompanied by his newlywed wife, 29-year-old Mrs. Lizzie. They were en route to the United States to start a new life. When the incident occurred, Lizzie was placed on a lifeboat. However, upon realizing that her husband, Mr. John, couldn't join her, she jumped back onto the sinking ship. The couple subsequently drowned, and Mr. John's watch stopped at the moment they descended into the icy depths of the Atlantic Ocean, precisely at 1:45 a.m. The watch was found alongside Mr. John's remains, but unfortunately, Lizzie's body was never recovered. This is indeed a heart-wrenching love story, and it feels like the 1997 movie Titanic was crafted based on this tragic event. And this is Creep Factor. Thank you for taking the time to watch the entire video. And if you like this video, please click like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more interesting contents.